started with the presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kelly Hull. She is a third-year graduate student in the community psychology program here at the University of Illinois. And her special areas of interest are identifying factors of resilience and also resilience against stress, and then also studying emotional regulation. So very interesting areas of interest. And this will be something that will be on the web as well. So we hope to reach a large audience with information about caring for yourself when you're caring for someone else. So Kelly, thank you for being here, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Jeannie. And thank you so much for your introduction already with your sorority. And I really appreciate hearing that autism advocacy. And I'm really glad to see just so many voices and everything here today. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started then. So like Jeannie said, my name is Kelly. I'm a PhD student at the University of Illinois. And the title of the talk today for TAP Tuesdays is examining resiliency factors in caregivers of children with ASD, so caring for the caregiver. All right, so I'm really happy to be here. I am a student at University of Illinois, and I'm also a graduate student clinician at the University of Illinois Autism Clinic. And so there's our little red penguin logo there that we really like. And so it's really great to be here and work with Jeannie more directly, as we at our clinic, we really often refer people to TAP for advocacy and resources. So I've heard a little bit about who my audience is, but also just want to get a sense of the rest of the audience here. If you could maybe say out loud or say in the chat, what brought you here today? Are you a parent, or are you part of this great sorority that's here and the voices here? I'd just love to hear from everyone. I see a parent. Great to meet you, Katrina. Thanks for being here. Awesome, thank you. Great, representative from Carl, so great to hear. All right, well, I'll go ahead and move forward. We've got a lot of content today, but yeah, keep sending your messages along in the chat. Jeannie's going to help me monitor that a little bit. But so nice to see some parents already, some representatives from Carl and TAP. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. All right, so a brief overview of this talk today. So first, I want to start off with a little reflection. Why have this talk? Why is this talk important? And also think about, thoughts on self-care. What exactly is that? I'm sure we're hearing a lot about it right now in the pandemic. Why is it important? And why is it important particularly to this population of caregivers? I'll also address a bit about the impacts of caregiver stress in families of children with ASD. So highlighting this unique prevalence of stress in this population, and discuss reasons why this might be so. And then I'll introduce resilience and different factors of resilience, kind of talk about what this is and what are the different patterns and benefits of resilience. And then finally, I'll conclude with some recommendations. These are different resources that you can apply to everyday life or often refer to someone else. And then some of these different recs are in the form of links. And so these slides are going to be provided to you for your future reference whenever you might need them. All right, so just to reflect on, why having this talk, and just wanting to kind of share my context of bringing this topic forward. And like Jeannie said, my research interests align similarly to this topic. I'm interested in resilience against stress and the psychological factors that contribute to this, especially when it comes to the interaction between emotion and cognition. And also within my time at the autism clinic, I really enjoyed the experience of getting to work with families through this diagnostic process and even get a chance to meet others and their families through like individual screenings and meetings for autism. And so it's just made me really recognize the importance of the role of these caregivers and these parents throughout this process. And they're just doing their absolute best to advocate for their child, get their questions answered, and figure out next steps. And also, this process is often really messy and stressful. And so as a clinic, we really try to do our best to acknowledge this and provide as many resources as we can to help. And also within the literature, understanding resiliency factors in these caregivers is an under-researched topic. And it's actually gaining some more attention lately. So I'm excited to share some of these findings with everyone. And notably, and I'll go into this a bit more later in my talk, families of children with ASD report higher levels of stress. And so researchers are trying to compile these different patterns and personal accounts as to why this is so. And so in this field and in my own experience, there's this emphasis of not only advocating for the child, but also advocating for the parent and caregiver, just making sure that they're taking care of themselves as they're taking care of their family, and just how important this is. So first, just want to introduce this concept of self-care. I'm sure we're hearing a lot about this. Thought it would be helpful to see like this more formal definition here. And so here, self-care is defined as the engagement in behaviors that are self-selected by a person that help maintain and or promote health, professional functioning, and a balance between one's personal and professional life. And so with all this in mind, I want us to think about, why self-care is important and how it can actually look really different in between people. And so self-care strategies can come in many different forms. One form being physical, and a question that might accompany this form of self-care is, are you exercising? Or are you sleeping well? Another form of self-care is emotional. So do you have people in your life that you can express your emotions and concerns to? Spiritual forms of self-care, and this can be religious or non-religious. And an accompanying question with that is, do you find the time to immerse yourself in something that you enjoy? And another form of self-care being renewal and growth. So are you open to learning and trying new things? Do you have long-term goals for yourself? And so I want to address this, to my audience here, especially the parents who are here and think that this topic might really apply to them. How would you rate your level of self-care? So I worked with Jeannie today to get this poll going. So hoping to hear from you all about how would you rate your level of self-care? Oh, and I think I just pulled this up, this poll here. So if you can, try to pull up that poll there at the bottom of your screen. It says polling. And think about how you would rate your own level of self-care. And if you think A, I got this, I'm a master of self-care, then select A. B, sometimes I practice self-care. C, sometimes I set self-care goals, but I have trouble following through. Or D, I don't prioritize myself. Okay, so it's going, and it is anonymous, so we'll just see some of the stats there. All right, great. And can everyone see this poll screen, or is that just me? If it's just me, most of the answers that I'm getting, oh, it's just me. Thank you, Aggie. Okay, so most of the answers that I'm getting are in fact B and C are the majority of the answers I'm getting. So a little bit of sometimes in there. No one said they're a master of self-care. I don't think I can even say that either. Okay, so some B and C and some Ds as well. Okay, so thank you everyone for answering that there. So just acknowledging that this is a practice that we all kind of need to work on. And so, as a family caregiver, it is important to take care of yourself as well. I also want to be upfront and honest about this. This is something that we're supposed to do. We're supposed to take time to take care of ourselves, but that's a lot easier said than done. It can be really hard to do. And the reality is that there's this wide variety of stressors out there and expectations that go along with them. So, overall, my hope today is that you're able to take this topic in and recognize your importance in this and your amazing role as a parent and caregiver, or of course, somebody that you know and love or advocating for today. Just get a chance to think about even the smallest ways that you can advocate for yourself or someone else without adding too much to the already busy plate. Okay, so next I want to address these unique challenges of caregivers of children with ASD. And so one theme that emerges is the stress of the diagnostic process and next steps, right? And this can consist of, these long waiting lists, lots of appointments, taking in all this new information that's thrown at you, just trying to figure out what to start with and what's the most feasible for you and your family. Another theme that emerges is, navigating services and advocating for the child's needs. So, kind of figuring out where and when to engage in these services, what the cost is, how can you communicate with all the people involved in your child's network, and advocate for them in the best way. And another unique challenge that accompanies this one is there's this high turnover of staff in the autism field, and that can be really stressful because you figured something out, you found a person to go to, and then that person decides to leave somewhere else, and that can really leave you hanging. Another unique challenge to this bullet here is the pandemic right now. This adds an additional challenge because a lot of the supports have been out, unfortunately. So people have been kind of left to their own devices, and this can be really difficult to adjust to and manage as this pandemic continues. Another unique challenge that emerges here are financial and time-related strains. And so this can be, the cost of services, cost of transportation, or even time away from work to be with your child or take them to appropriate services. And so one may have to make sacrifices based on what's the most feasible. Another point that emerges here is unpredictability of child's behaviors. And this is unique to every family and presentation of ASD symptoms. But perhaps, there's some unpredictability associated with taking your child or your family to new places. And maybe it's accompanied with that uncertainty about how they'd react, and you'd rather just avoid that potential distress entirely. And overall, when it comes to these caregivers, there's just increased demands on their time and thus not enough time to take care of themselves. Also wanted to put this little ellipsis point here, just kind of leaving room here for other challenges that are not mentioned in this list. It's not meant to be exhaustive, but just to highlight some of these themes that are emerging forward. Okay, so next I wanted to share, some quotes and some voices from other parents. And these are from either articles or blogs or some qualitative studies. And these voices are just sharing some unique stressors that they've experienced when it comes to caring for a child with ASD. And this is not to say that there aren't positives and amazing positives for caring for a child with ASD. And I'll address that just next here for us in a moment. But just to hear from some of these parents in their own words, some of these unique stressors that have come up for them. I'll just go through and read through some of these voices here. So this parent said, a trip to the grocery store can be really stressful because you don't know if your child is going to have a meltdown. Another parent here said, we usually balance our financial demands by always cutting down the majority of my daughter's demands in our personal family visits. All I used to do was shout at my wife or mother when we were not able to get any idea what my child needed, due to which he was showing aggressive behavior. At times, my wife used to cry and everything was upside down. Due to the non-availability of treatment in our hometown, in 2017, we planned to shift to the capital city for his treatment and studies. Everyone looks at me because they don't know my child has autism and they just think I'm being a bad parent. I mean, it was so bad that my friends used to laugh at my child, and even when we parents were unable to understand in the starting years. So I also want to emphasize here that that was just a brief look at some of these comments that parents have made. And this talk is not just meant to be limited to those domains or comments that they spoke to, but this question is sort of geared to those parents here in the audience. Perhaps you can relate, or perhaps you have a completely different experience than previously shown. And, parenting and caregiving, it's not a one size fits all approach. And if you're comfortable, I'd love to hear from some of the parents in the audience. What are some of these? Can you relate to some of these quotes that the parents shared? Do you have a unique experience that you would like to share with the group?
I'm not a parent, but I do have something to share.
Yeah,
I have worked at the YMCA in the Park District, and just when kids do need aid, a lot of parents are really scared to say that at first, which
yeah,
I notice is really interesting. Because like we could give the aid, we just wouldn't know because the parents are scared to tell us. Um, so yeah, that was just something I noticed.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
We were kicked out of a church.
Oh, no.
So
Yeah,
my daughter was too challenging for like nursery or childcare, and they didn't want her in the service with us because she was too loud and obnoxious or was unpredictable with her noises. I mean, she's a lot better now. I mean, she's 14 and we've overcome a lot, but kind of turned us off of religion in general.
yeah,
And we definitely have not been a part of an organized church in a long time, just because we didn't feel like we were welcome.
definitely. Yeah, that's so unfortunate. Thank you for sharing that.
Drita says the same thing happened to their family. And
Thank you, Jeannie.
yeah, just want to acknowledge that because that's an important thing. And I want to speak to the first. As a parent of a child with autism, it can be really hard to know when to disclose and when not to disclose because you don't know if your child is going to be supported or if they're going to be discriminated against. So it's kind of tricky.
Thank you, Jeannie. I see a comment from Rich here in the chat. Thank you for sharing that, Rich.
Hi, I just wanted to
Hi.
say, my son, like, he's 9 now, but we were at church when he was little. He used to go under the pews and stuff, so I can relate to that one.
Mhm.
But he's older now, and so with remote, he can't. He's in the house. So we Zoom on church. But I want to say that sometimes it's hard because you don't know when maybe have an outburst.
Yeah,
It could be somewhere and things don't go their way or something, and and then I call him a runner, because if he
Mhm.
don't like something, like we were just at the doctor's office, he kind of snatched some papers out of my hand because he didn't want me to show the doctor that his how he relaxes himself, which is doodling, and so he snatched it out and then he run out the room. So yeah, if something don't go, like the barber saw something in his head, what do you call it, the hair felt something, and he wanted to fix it or whatever. He ran out the door. He didn't like that. So yeah, he's a runner, and you just never know. So I stay a little stressed and anxious on that when we're outside.
definitely. Definitely. Yes. Thank you for sharing that and just speaking to that unpredictability of behaviors and just wanting to make sure that he's safe and not running into danger there. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everyone so much for being vulnerable and sharing there. I appreciate it. And if any other voices want to say something, I'll leave a couple of seconds here. Okay. I will go ahead and keep going then. Of course, thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. Also want to address that there are some really amazing positives, of course, about being a caregiver of a child with ASD. And so just to share some of these other parent voices that have expressed how meaningful this has been and how much love that they have for their kid, and also would love to welcome the floor again to hear some of these positive perspectives from you as well. So this parent said, he has been a gift. I have grown because of him. It's been probably the best learning experience of my life to watch him, to share, and learn how to be patient. Her being autistic has taught us to be a lot more patient and to be more open-minded and tolerant, just to realize that people do things at different speeds. So my overall well-being mentally, psychologically, he has a lot to do with me trying to be a little more positive, seeing the glass half full routine. He really does. He's contributed greatly to my desire to try harder. This parent said, when things go well for him, when you see him advance, you see things click for him. And I can't even explain the joy and pride that you have for your child when that happens. Through our son's hard work and all the support he receives, he was able to do it all for himself. I don't think there could be any stronger benefit to help explain this. This parent said, it's made me appreciate things a little bit better because I don't take her learning for granted. When she does pop up that she knows something new, wow, you realize how much effort she's put into it. When I'm out with my friends, it's a lot more beneficial for me to talk about things like this and how to advance the cause and how to advocate for my child. There's more of a sense of purpose. So I want to open it up again to the audience here if they want to share some of these similar or maybe different positive and unique experiences here.
I'm gonna share again. So
Do it.
just I've noticed like a lot of other workers when they're dealing with kids who do need more assistance, they kind of like either back away and just like don't want to deal with it or go like to the angry route. But I've learned that giving more like positive feedback and just more, I've noticed that like instead of giving, I don't know, like a consequence, we started to do like smiley faces for like good behavior, like more improvement and just more learning. So it kind of showed that appreciation.
Definitely. Thanks so much. I loved hearing that.
I got to work with a student who had autism a couple summers ago, and he had trouble communicating with the speech therapist that we were working with. But like from seeing like what he was interested in, we had a really good conversation about the game Minecraft, and just like having that connection and seeing like him feel really comfortable and excited to talk about a certain subject, just it made me feel good that like he was comfortable talking to me about something that he was interested in, and just having that little connection moment with him is just like when you have that connection with someone who's not really comfortable sharing, it's like a really special time.
Definitely. That sounds so special. I appreciate you sharing that.
I think for me, it has made me a much stronger advocate, which I don't think I would have been before that. I was actually probably more on the quiet, shy, reserved side, and I wouldn't confront people out in public. And I've definitely gotten over that as an advocate for my daughter.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you.
I think my wife and I both talked about how having boys with autism has helped us prioritize a little more and not run after some of the things and have put so much importance on some of the things that don't really matter. Just a little more focused on, what's really important, I guess.
Definitely. Yeah, that's such a great perspective to take. Thank you.
I have a negative and a positive where a negative led to a positive for me.
Great. Yeah.
I was working for a daycare and I would bring my kids with me, and the daycare provider I worked for, she would pick up my son from school, but complain all the time that he was late on the bus. And there was this one time he was late getting on the bus and she just left him there. And that same day I quit my job, and from that point on, my son and I had a better relationship because he saw that I will always put his needs first. So that helped develop the relationship as well. So sometimes, those negatives help build, the relationship that you need to communicate as well.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It just, you unfortunately had to make that adjustment, but I'm really glad to hear that adjustment was beneficial in the long run for you too.
Yeah, because no matter what, my son will come first. It doesn't matter my job either. So I will.
Absolutely.
And I did quit that same day, because you should never leave a child at school.
Absolutely.
Regardless if they're slow or not. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing there. I really appreciate it. All right, we'll go ahead and keep moving forward, but feel free to share any other great stories in the chat there, and then Jean can monitor that. All right, so I want to bring us back again to our main topic, thinking about why stress in this population deserves attention. And so notably, it's been reported that caregivers of children with ASD report significantly higher perceived and familial stress levels and higher rates of depressive symptoms than those of typically developing children. So this is a big deal, that these statistics and reports of these higher levels of stress are unique to this population. We want to think about how this affects their mental health. So, and with these higher reports of distress levels in mind, we also want to think about the implications of these high stress levels and these symptoms here. And so how does this affect the person that's experiencing this? And so for one, there's a physiological impact of stress. For example, dysregulated cortisol levels. So this dysregulation of cortisol in your body is associated with, medical issues, and it kind of impacts your overall body homeostasis and regulations. So that can have a physiological impact on yourself. There's also an emotional impact associated with stress. There can be higher psychopathological symptoms like depression and anxiety associated with stress, and also certain negative feelings like anger. Stress can also be accompanied by the use of maladaptive coping strategies. And so if you're really stressed out, you're more likely to engage in these types of strategies like denial. And that can perhaps not be very helpful in the long run. There also can be this social impact of stress, such as these accompanied social challenges. Maybe these challenges can come in the form of changing family or friendship dynamics and maybe impact your communication. And this can lead to avoidance of interacting with others and further isolation, which can be harmful because social support is needed, and it's one of these great coping strategies that we have at hand. And similarly, with familial impact of stress, and this can have an impact perhaps towards marital quality, or even sibling relationships or extended relatives. And stress can also have this financial impact or accompanied financial strain. So if you're experiencing a lot of stress, it may take some time and energy away from your job or how you're performing, which can cause this sort of additional financial stress with time away from work. So with all this in mind, we want to also think about how can individuals and their families combat these implications of stress. So there's this psychological influence called resilience, which is positive psychological adaptation and perseverance when faced with life's challenges. And resilience is typically thought of as a dynamic process, so it's not stable over time. It can change, depending on the situation. And it's accompanied usually through behaviors, thoughts, and actions. So there's a lot of this research that's going on within this population, evaluating what resilience factors are contributing to the increased quality of life for caregivers and their families. I also wanted to share this quote here that I found from these researchers to kind of capture how far resilience really reaches. And so these authors, they said, resilience among caregivers of children with ASD is best conceptualized as a transactional process between child-specific and personal resources, in addition to the broader social and community network. So they're kind of expressing here that there's many of these different factors at play when it comes to developing resilience, this positive psychological adaptation to stress. And so this is, of course, dependent on the child's unique presentation and needs. It's dependent on the resources available to the family. And it's dependent on the broader and social community network, who's involved, friends, families, professionals, schools. And so sometimes these different domains vary in their intensity depending on the situation. And so resilience is accompanied by many associated benefits. One being the allowance for better coping strategies. So if you're resilient, you may engage more in these more helpful coping strategies for you. Some that come to mind are like acceptance, active coping, or seeking social support. And these are considered more adaptive and helpful in the long term. Resilience is also associated with positive outcomes of mental health, such as lower negative psychological symptoms like insomnia, depression, or anxiety. And resilience is associated with greater psychological well-being and life satisfaction. Resilience is also helpful when it comes to meaning making of a stressful situation or positive reframing. So positive reframing is a type of emotion regulation strategy where you're kind of reinterpreting a stressor into a more positive light. Another way that the literature thinks about this is through cognitive reappraisal. So you're basically, seeing a silver lining in a potential negative situation. And resilience is also associated with empowerment. So it's kind of giving you this more sense of control in your life. And so not only are there these associated benefits of resilience, there are also these links to predictors of resilience. So this is kind of looking at these different patterns that researchers are finding that are going to be the most helpful to caregivers and their families who are adapting well. And they're also known as protective factors. Overall, these factors have been found to help and decrease the negative effects of stress. So one of these predictors is positive family functioning. And this involves a commitment to support the functions of the family. And that can include safety, caregiving, communication, among other things. And of course, this can look very different between families. For instance, for a two-parent household, this may require, joint efforts of the co-parents to kind of manage family responsibilities. And for single-parent households, there may be different dynamics at play. And it's going to be dependent on, the other support people that they have in their life to kind of help manage everyday family functioning. Another predictor of resilience is this sense of coherence. And so it's this idea that you and your family view the world as manageable and meaningful. And a lower sense of coherence is associated with the use of typically negative coping strategies like denial or avoidance. So having this higher sense of coherence can kind of help create that perspective that you can manage challenges that come your way and in a meaningful way. Another predictor of resilience is acceptance. And this is the ability to kind of embrace internal events like thoughts, feelings, memories, and sensations. And it involves this adjustment to a family's needs and the ability to kind of just find that peace in the present. And so feeling acceptance, it helps to change one's worldview and just recognize what you have rather than what you're missing. Self-efficacy is another one. So self-efficacy refers to your confidence in your ability to cope or your confidence in your ability to approach challenges. So if you believe and you have confidence that you can handle any challenge that you come your way, that you can utilize the resources that you have in an effective way, this can help manage stress even better. Optimism. This involves feelings of hope and confidence for positive outcomes, So if a family exhibits this increased feelings of optimism, then this is associated with fewer negative outcomes like feelings of stress. And another predictor of resilience has been seen as enrichment. So this is having a positive view in different domains involving the family. Like this can involve having a positive view of oneself as a parent, having positive relationships with children and partners, and or living a religious or spiritual life. So having more enrichment is associated with less parenting stress and associated very positively with resilience. So there's a number of other predictors of resilience that have been found by other authors. So one being social supports, and we've talked about that a bit already. But having more and quality social supports has been associated with better family congruence and provides opportunities to learn and be heard from others. For example, having support from your partner, maybe your extended family, friends, or even members of the community can be really beneficial to your mental health. There are also really important multicultural considerations when it comes to developing resilience. And for multicultural considerations, this is associated with understanding and respecting different familial structures. So a lot of research in the past is typically normed towards white Western cultural groups. But there are a number of different cultural backgrounds that also need voices and representation. And so by doing so, this allows for better tailoring of interventions and overall optimizing treatment outcomes. So as you likely know, your cultural background, shapes your worldview. And this may be different than other people in terms of considering what familial supports are available, or even how you're understanding behavior. So overall, knowing that you and your family's needs may be different than the norm, and knowing that you're able to advocate for your family's needs based on what's most appropriate to the values that you have. When it comes to professional supports, this consists of the quality of professional supports like holistic educational supports or even early intervention programs, among others. And so these supports are associated with better coordination of care and associated with the needs that are appropriate for you and your family. And so you know your child best, and working with quality professionals can help with easing some of that stress associated with this overall process of figuring all this out. So if you need any additional help or alternative recommendations as you're thinking about this bullet point, TAP is a really great place to get started with this conversation and get access to the professional supports that have really worked well for people in the past. So another predictor that emerges in the literature are these familial supports. And so there are the different dynamics for every family. And research has found that those who exhibit positive familial supports, like having this strength-based mindset, this is linked to strengthening family values and relationships. And so this strengths-based mindset can be like focusing on valuing milestones and progression rather than what's missing or lost. And then family supports can help with navigating care, like helping out with some of the heavy lifting and coordinating efforts together. And this can be as simple as, coordinating transportation to get the child to school or other services, or even just taking that time and energy to celebrate those milestones as they happen. So positive adaptations is another predictor of resilience that emerges. And this is, being able to positively adapt to a stressful situation. And of course, this one is easier said than done because there are many uncontrollable stressors at play when it comes to caring for your family. And so research has shown that taking this problem-solving approach kind of helps to find solutions that are in one's control. For example, if something stressful comes up, maybe taking that extra moment to make a list of things that you can control versus the things that you can't. And that may help to kind of clear your head and be able to problem solve or create a next step plan moving forward. And acceptance also comes back into play here again, by accepting the things you can control versus the one you can't, having this level of mindfulness that can help adapt to stressors and develop resilience. And my last predictor of resilience that I'll address here are spiritual factors. Spiritual wellness has been associated with increased well-being. It can play this role in meaning making, like finding that silver lining or using positive reframing, and providing hope and strength in the face of challenges. And spiritual factors, they can be religious or non-religious. Spirituality can be affiliated with religion, that organized belief or practice that's shared by a community. But spirituality can also be non-religious. It can be an individual practice, perhaps by finding sense of peace and purpose, by being connected to others, being connected to nature, or being connected to society. So with all this in mind and taking all of this in, next we want to think about, how can I actually do this in real life? What are some strategies that I can try to help with practicing self-care to find relief, to reduce stress, and improve my mental and physical health? And so with these upcoming strategies and recommendations, I hope that some of these are helpful. And I also would welcome any additional comments or ideas, maybe things that you've tried in the past, things that you've heard about. I'm so happy to share that with me and with our audience today. So the first step for thinking of how to apply this to your everyday life, first one being is that you're here. Just appreciate everyone being here today, to just recognize the importance of advocating for yourself and advocating for the people that you know who may be experiencing this. And also just the importance of awareness and engagement on this topic. As I mentioned before, it's an under-researched topic, but it is gaining some leeway here. So just appreciating and having that awareness that this is happening and the prevalence is high and what we can actually do about it, next steps moving forward. All right, so as we think about this in our everyday life, we want to think about making time for self-care. I know at the beginning we kind of all mentioned how sometimes we're doing this, but something that we need to work on a bit. And our lives right now, of course, are very busy and overscheduled. So finding time to do this can feel like extra stress. So with all this in mind, wanting to come up with self-care goals that are achievable, in that mindset, can start really small. Maybe even just generate yourself a little list of stuff that can be feasible, stuff that's achievable. And it can be as little as like, I'm going to take 10 minutes to do this activity. I'm going to take 10 minutes to myself, even 5 minutes if that's too much. So starting small and starting with something that's achievable. And so here I just have this kind of informal list of potentially simple self-care activities that you can try in your everyday life. And this category in particular are things that you can do at home. And so some you can do for even a few minutes, like reading a book, sitting on the front porch, taking a nap. And then some ideas, maybe just take something off your plate, like ordering dinner or things like that. So I kind of looked through some of the blogs here and some different ideas. And so I liked some of these, even as simple as like taking time to stretch, listening to music, calling a friend or family member, making a list of 10 things you're grateful for, cooking a fancy meal. I also liked this one, this editing who you follow on social media. Some people talked about having this like social media cleanse to try to be exposed to things that are positive for them. And these are just a little, another informal list of self-care activities that you can do away from home. Getting a pedicure or manicure, getting a massage, taking a little walk, buying some fresh flowers, going to a coffee shop, going to a bar, or even just walking around your favorite store, grocery store, bookstore, anything like that. I also liked some of these really simple ones, like go for a drive, no destination required. Just kind of taking that extra minute to do that. So there's just a couple ideas there. So I also wanted to have this space here to acknowledge to those who are co-parenting. And this can be either in a marital relationship or with other family members or another partner in life. Just acknowledging, self-care and partnership, these also go hand in hand as well. So you would kind of need to have these conversations with your partner about having these goals together and just having your partner's support on this. And that can be really important and meaningful so that you kind of can help each other make that time for yourselves. and even taking on the responsibility when your partner needs self-care time as well. So next here, starting to provide some of these extra kind of recommendations that may be applicable to our local community. So one being, joining the parent support group. That's going to be really essential when it comes to building, that social support network for yourself. And, these different support groups can be really helpful when it comes to, knowing that you're not alone and you can kind of talk to people with similar experiences. And that sense of community can be really powerful and helpful. And so these are a couple of options of places for support groups that we'd recommend. Of course, TAP being here, the CU Autism Network, this Asperger Autism Network, AANE, and even taking a look, at the Psychology Today website. And there's kind of a specific filter there where you can find an autism support group. And there's also a link here that's tailored more locally for parent and family support groups in Illinois. And just to say again that everyone will be getting these slides if they want. All right. So another thing to note is that sometimes people have found online communities really helpful. And so Family Matters offers, this parent training and information center and an online community for parents and caregivers. Also wanted to point out that on their website, I found that they have these different topics of the month, right? And in June 2020, they did address a topic that was similar to what we're talking about today, breaks from caregiving, respite. And so respite care is this sort of short-term relief for primary caregivers. And it can be arranged just for like an afternoon or for several days or weeks. And this care can be provided at home, in a healthcare facility, or an adult daycare center. And Jeannie mentioned that TAP doesn't offer this directly, but TAP can help direct people to resources to find this if you feel like this is something that you'd like to consider. I see someone raise their hand. Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was also going to say that I worked with a Champaign nonprofit organization called Real Life Families, and that one's a really great organization that offers tools to parents so that they can be able to better support their kids, and like just teaching them tools on how to raise their kids in the best manner, as well as self-caring. So I think that if parents or anyone's interested as well, Real Life Families is a great nonprofit organization that offers free classes to parents so that they're able to, just get some tools and get some different ideas on how to raise their kids as well.
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much. And I made a note of that too, to include in the future. Thank you. All right, awesome. And so another online support group option are like Facebook community groups. Also want to kind of address this with that caveat that can be a double-edged sword sometimes, wanting to engage in the useful pieces, but try to maybe mute the unuseful pieces of this, like maybe other parents trying to tell you what to do and how to raise your child, things like that. So the unhelpful pieces definitely want to avoid, but this is always an option. And also, different levels of blogs. And so some of them I even use to tailor and structure my talk today. But I just appreciate that, some of these authors are giving voice to this really specific topic and to parents and kids with autism. And so some of these blogs also address these different book options. And so just wanted to quickly kind of share these here with links to where you can find them. And so these different books are also, tailored to this population group, and also typically written by voices who also have kids on the spectrum. And so that can be applicable to your everyday life as well. And so heard already from somebody, which was awesome, about another recommendation that they had. And so would also kind of open up to the group to share any other recommendations that you've heard of or currently use that you could share with the larger group.
I've recently just heard from a professor in the College of Education, and she specializes in special education. About I don't know if they're only in Chicago, but this group called Grupo Salto, which is, I think it's tailored toward like Latino families. But I do know that they are a group that also revolves around like autism, and I think they offer resources for like Latino parents with kids with autism.
Mhm.
But I'm sure it's still like an all-inclusive group. I'm not
Yeah,
too sure about like everything they do, but that's just another group that I know of.
definitely. Thank you so much. All right, I'll go ahead and keep going, but if any other ideas pop up, definitely feel free to share or add them in the chat here for us. Also want to have, a couple of these concluding thoughts with just remember that self-care is not selfish. If you want to take the best possible care of your child and your family, you must also first take care of the best possible care of yourself. And so just appreciating this amazing role that you have and taking care of yourself as well as your family too. And so just here to review what we talked through so far. First, we reflected on, why having this talk is important, different thoughts on self-care and, what it is and different forms it can take. We talked through the different impacts of caregiver stress in families of children with ASD, particularly that high prevalence of stress in this population and, the impacts of that. And then we address these different factors of resilience, so that positive psychological adaptation. What are the different patterns that are associated with this that can help when it comes to managing stress? And also concluded here with recommendations. And I'm really glad that I got a chance to share some of the ones that I knew of and that we heard from the audience too, to hear more about those. And so with that, I would like to thank everyone for coming today. We'll also stick around if you have any comments or questions. And I really appreciate you being here and listening. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for that really informative and valuable, validating talk. I think that as a caregiver, it's just good to have the things that you're experiencing reinforced by what's in the literature, to know that. And Rich Eisminger thanked all of the sorority women who are here for taking a special interest. It really is so special that you did that as a group. And we're so happy because you will take this message then out to the people that you know. So we're so happy about that as well. And we do have a couple more minutes here, about 3 minutes. If anyone would like to ask a question or share something very briefly so that we can give people an opportunity, that would be wonderful. But just want to give a word of encouragement to you parents out there that, if it's getting rough, do contact us at TAP. We will try to plug you in with some sort of support, problem solve with you. And I appreciate, Kelly, you giving us a shout out here and there within your presentation. So thank you to everyone.
I just want to say again, thank you so much for that presentation. And just thank you to the parents as well for feeling comfortable to share their personal experiences with us. This is our philanthropy, so we definitely take pride in it and would want to do the best we can to advocate for people with autism and just spread so much more knowledge about it. So thank you for hosting these workshops for the month of April. They were really nice, and thank you.
I'd just like to say thank you to the facilitator. I definitely needed this, I did learn some things for self-care, and I really did need it because this is a new diagnosis for me for my son, and he's 9. So a lot of more challenging things, but I love him so much, and I'm going to do everything possible to advocate for him and to learn more about this ASD, so that I can help my son to become, to manage on his own and be more independent as he grows. So I'm looking forward to anything, all the links, anything that I could join in on. So I look forward to the emails. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Glad you were here.
You got it. Thank you so much.
I also want to say to everyone, this is the time of the call where it's not awkward to make your goodbyes and log off if you're done. So thanks to all who came, and anyone who wants to hang around and chat, you can do that.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.